Welcome everyone to what's happening on Tahoe's East Shore. Tonight we're going to be talking about environmental improvement projects happening on the East Shore this summer. So hopefully you are in the right place. My name is Victoria Ortiz and I'm the Community Engagement Manager with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and I'll be your MC for the evening. We will start with just some basic guidelines for this webinar. As you can probably tell already, everyone is muted. We're going to ask all participants to please use the Q&A box to submit questions. That's at the bottom of your screen. And we will not be using the chat tonight. So please submit all of your questions for panelists in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We may be summarizing some of these questions, especially if we get the same ones, and we will be responding to them throughout the webinar. The recording and slides from tonight's presentation will be shared on TRPA's Vimeo page, and we'll be sure to get that to all of the participants and people who have registered. Next slide, please, Jeff. Great, thank you. We've got a full lineup for you tonight covering all of these different EIP projects, and we'll be covering multiple projects under each environmental improvement program focus area. So after each focus area, we'll have 5 minutes to answer some questions that have come in through the Q&A, and then we'll go to the next focus area. If we can't get to all of the questions, then we will have some more Q&A at the end of the presentation, or like I said, we'll have the slides and recording, and that has contact information for all of the panelists, so you can reach out to them then. I noticed someone raised their hand. We will not be using the raise hand function. So if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So we've got a lot of information in store for you tonight, so we will get going. Next slide, please. A little bit of background on the Environmental Improvement Program, or EIP. I know a lot of us are here because we live, work, and play in Lake Tahoe, America's second deepest lake. And when some people come to Tahoe, they see what they think looks like a beautiful, pristine lake. But in actuality, Tahoe has faced many environmental threats over the years. From historic logging, development, grazing, all of these caused Lake Tahoe's famous clarity to plummet over the years. Fortunately, leaders rallied in the late 1990s to form the Lake Tahoe Environmental Improvement Program, or EIP. And led by the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency in partnership with more than 80 organizations, the EIP was launched at the first Tahoe Summit with Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. This partnership works to achieve the environmental goals of the Tahoe region. Next slide. Local, state, and federal government agencies, private entities, scientists, and the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California have collaborated for more than 25 years to restore the environmental health of Lake Tahoe. You can see private entities listed here, but I also want to point out that you, the public, are a huge part of the success of the EIP. By implementing best management practices, or BMPs, or making sure that your property has defensible space, even simple things like picking up dog poop and trash, or participating in citizen science opportunities can contribute directly to the health of Lake Tahoe. So you are all very much a part of this as well. Next slide. And this landscape scale collaboration is considered the blueprint for Tahoe's climate resiliency and falls into 4 categories that you can see here. So tonight we will be walking you through the key projects happening on the East Shore this summer in watersheds and water quality, forest health, sustainable recreation and transportation, and science stewardship and accountability. Next slide. Amazingly, in the last 25 years, partners have completed over 700 projects totaling over $2.6 billion in investment for Lake Tahoe. And this funding is shared by all of the partners that we just mentioned. And you can see a general breakdown of how we all contribute to bringing these projects to fruition. Next slide. So we know that in Tahoe, our economy and our environment are inextricably linked. And in 2020, we conducted an economic analysis that quantified some of the economic impacts of the Environmental Improvement Program. So as you can see, with the $2.6 billion in direct investment, that has led to $5.2 billion in total economic output. It also contributes to over 1,000 jobs annually, and supports a really robust economy. Next slide. We're committed to being as transparent as possible, which is why all of the partners have pulled together an interactive website that shows real-time data about all EIP projects and expenditures. And you can find that by going to eip.laketahoeinfo.org as listed here. Next slide. So we've got a lot to cover, and we will dive right in with the forest health focus area and how we're protecting communities from damaging wildfires while restoring ecosystem health and enhancing wildlife habitat. I don't see any questions in the Q&A about the basic EIP. If you do have any, feel free to throw them in there and I will answer those. But for now, I'm pleased to present Anna Higgins with the Nevada Division of Forestry to talk about the Spooner Landscape Restoration Project and the NV Energy 4100 project in Incline. Go ahead and take it away, Anna.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Anna Higgins. I'm a forester with Nevada Division of Forestry, and I'm part of the Nevada Tahoe resource team, and I manage the forests of Nevada Lake Tahoe State Park. Next slide. So one of the big projects we've been working on for years, it was started by my predecessor, Roland Shaw, who retired in January. Spooner Landscape Restoration Project, 300-acre project. It was helicopter logged back in 2018. A lot of larger trees were taken out in that logging. The logs were sent to a mill in Quincy, so that wood was utilized, which was great. A lot of the smaller trees that weren't taken out by the helicopter logging, we then hand thinned with using our conservation crews, our inmate crews, and we built burn piles. And over the last couple winters, we've been burning those piles. And even tomorrow, I'll have crews out around Spooner Lake doing more hand thinning, building more burn piles, and we'll be burning those piles over the next couple winters. So this project's kind of coming towards the end of its completion. Next slide. And so we burn our piles in the wintertime. This photo was taken, we were burning in January and February after the really large snowstorms that we got. And so we burn these in the winter so that the fire doesn't spread away from our burn piles. Pine needles are very conductive to fire, so they stay within the little footprint. Next slide. And so in January and February, we were able to treat 150 acres total, mostly off the Tahoe Rim Trail. And we burned down 1,350 piles. And so we removed a tremendous amount of fuel in the forest. And so moving forward, like I said, we're having crews out there tomorrow even working right around the lake. So we're going to be continuing to work to improve the forest health around Spooner Lake, as well as focusing on restoring some aspen stands that are in decline, and then also creating a fuel break along North Canyon Road. That is the road that leads from Spooner Lake up to Marlette Lake. And so trying to provide some better fighting fire points for firefighters in the future off North Canyon Road. Next slide. And so this photo was taken where we had burned this last winter. The photo was taken just a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of hard to see, but down the lower left-hand corner, just above the shadow there, that was where a burn pile was. So pretty minimal like scarring on the landscape. But I did want you to note in the foreground where we left the larger trees, but you can see the number of stumps. There's dozens of stumps. And so just wanted to highlight how many trees we're removing to try to restore forest health in this area. And so as many people are aware, the forests of Lake Tahoe were almost completely clear cut in the late 1800s to support the Comstock mining operations in Virginia City. And so these forests grew back naturally. However, these forests grew back in a different environment than when we found them, when white settlers found them in the late 1800s. And so with tree rings, you can determine how old a tree is based on their tree rings. You can also determine how many fires burned in an area based on how many fire scars are found in these tree rings. And so some of the trees that weren't cut down during the Comstock logging operations, these trees had fire scars, and researchers did a fire scar study, and they found that these forests historically burned every 5 to 20 years. Now many of these forests haven't seen fire in over 100 years. So that's a tremendous amount of fuel buildup. These forests used to burn low severity, understory burns, keeping the trees large, open, spaced. a lot of space in between the trees. Without fire, we have so many more trees, so much fuel loading. These forests aren't healthy. They're not resilient to drought, to insect outbreaks, wildfire. And by some researchers' estimates, we have 7 times more the trees today than we used to have back in the 1800s. And so that is part of our goal, is to make these forests healthier and more resilient. Next slide. So another great project that I'm working on in collaboration with NV Energy and North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District. You can see the photo on the left, I dropped a little pinpoint to show you where on the east shore it is. It's basically south of Tunnel Creek, north of Bon Plan. Those are kind of the boundaries of the project area. And so a really great collaborative project that we're working on. And so the yellow polygon here, this follows the power line that goes along the east shore. And North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District has treated this yellow polygon. They've created the burn piles. They're going to be burning those piles this winter. The green polygon is NDF Nevada Tahoe Resource Team project. And so those piles have also been created. We're hoping to burn those this winter as well. The purple polygon outline, no work has been done. I'm hoping to get contractors in there this summer to treat those acres. And then the red polygon outline, that's where I'm going to have our NDF inmate crews in there this summer as well, when they're not fighting fires, to treat that area as well. So next slide, a really great collaborative project. And the photo on the right shows the amount of vegetation that North Lake Tahoe removed, pretty much 100% of all the vegetation underneath the power line. The goal is so that hopefully the power lines won't start a fire under the power line, but also if a fire were to roll through there, the vegetation won't burn down the power lines and cause people to lose power. A lot of the vegetation they cut out is sprouting vegetation, manzanita, tobacco brush. So that stuff will grow back and will have to be retreated. The photo on the left shows kind of going outside of the right of way, outside of where the power lines are, doing more of a forest health, selective thinning and removing a little bit of shrubs. Next slide. And so I just wanted to point out the Tahoe Fire and Fuels team does a lot of projects around the lake. And if you go on to TahoeLivingWithFire.com, you can find this interactive map that shows all the projects that the partners are working on. And it also shows current prescribed fires. And so a lot of people call 911 when they see smoke. And in the wintertime, mostly that smoke's from our prescribed fire. And so if you ever see smoke and you don't know if it's a wildfire prescribed fire, you can always go on this website and look at our map, and they update it weekly on where we're actually burning around the lake. So a really great resource, as well as the bottom website, the alertwildfire.com, that shows smoke. It's video cameras that are located all around California and Nevada. And so you can hop on those cameras as well and look at the smoke that we're producing from our prescribed fires. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks, Anna. Let's see, we had one question come in for you from, let's see. It says, along Old Highway 50, there are perhaps 1,000 logs that NDF cut several years ago. What's going on with those?
Yeah, so we cut those logs on Forest Service property, U.S. Forest Service, federal property. They hired our crews to cut the trees, put the logs on the road. It was always the Forest Service's responsibility to remove the logs. So it's out of my wheelhouse. I had heard they wanted to try to donate some of it for firewood. The wood's been sitting there so long, it can't be sent to a mill. So it only can be used for firewood or chipped up into wood chips. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer because it's Forest Service logs. We are in there currently. We just finished up a project today logging on private property for the Glenbrook Homeowners Association. So there's more logs that have been put on that old Highway 50. And we're working with Tahoe Douglas Fire Protection District. Those logs will be removed off the private property. I just don't have any say for the federal logs. So.
Gotcha. Thank you. And thanks, Roger, for the question. Again, anyone can put questions in the Q&A, and we will move us along, but Anna, keep an eye out on that Q&A and we'll see if other questions pop up. So next slide, please, Jeff. So as a lot of you know, millions of people visit Lake Tahoe every year, which helps to drive Tahoe's $5 billion annual economy. And corridor plans are underway along Nevada's State Route 28 to improve safety and public access, while also protecting the special areas of Sand Harbor and Spooner. So we're now going to hear from Jay Howard with Nevada State Parks, followed by Danielle Hughes with the Tahoe Transportation District, who will outline what you can expect to see in this area in the coming years. So take it away, Jay.
Thanks, Victoria. Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for having me tonight. My name is Jay Howard with Nevada State Parks and also the Nevada Tahoe Resource Team. And I'd like to share some information on two projects tonight, the Spooner Front Country Improvements and the Sand Harbor Vision Plan. I can also take questions after the sustainable recreation presentations, and if I don't have an answer, like we said, I'd be happy to contact or to take contact information and get back to you later, or whatever works there. The first project is the Spooner Front Country Improvements at Spooner Lake State Park. Planning began there in 2016 when it was decided that certain facilities needed to be upgraded. Next slide. Public surveys were conducted, which indicated the types of recreation activities that were most popular at Spooner, and generally the need for modern facilities to support those activities. Hiking, mountain biking, and the equestrian users, people that love to get in the outdoors and just hike, those are typically the most popular things at Spooner, but also fishing at Spooner Lake. So a visioning process with consultants resulted in a whole new layout for the park. Work began in 2021 and is scheduled to be completed later on this year. Facilities will include a visitor center and amphitheater for programs and tours. Next slide. A redesigned entrance and enhanced parking lots, restrooms, group use areas for events and group activities, picnic tables to include sites down by the lake, and new trails and pathways with interpretive elements. The pathway system will also include a multi-use path that is intended to connect the Tahoe East Shore Trail to the visitor center. Until the East Shore Trail is extended from Sand Harbor to Spooner Summit, the pathway will just connect to the entrance station. During construction, the park will remain open with at least one parking lot at a time. So please plan for the limited parking this summer. Please also visit our website at parks.nv.gov to participate in a visitor survey later this summer related to additional facilities at Spooner. Preliminary discussions on that have included a wildlife viewing platform and non-motorized launch ramp on the lake, and the Meadow Interpretive Trail just to the north of the main developed area. You can see on this map the potentially proposed viewing platform and ramp to the right of the map, kind of in the middle, and where the Meadow Trail would begin in the upper left. As part of this current construction, a portion of the Meadow Trail is being built through what used to be the old picnic area. But the Meadow Trail that I talk about is more of a trail out in the meadow itself, about a 2-mile loop just out in the meadow. Next slide. The next project I want to share is the Sand Harbor Vision Plan. This will be a planning document that will guide newer redesigned facilities at the park. The concept is for the plan to take a holistic approach to the design and layout of facilities, transportation and transit solutions on roads and pathways, and to gain a better understanding of capacity impacts to the facility. A very important aspect of operations will be to update the Sand Harbor capacity study that was done in 2010. Capacity elements may include physical or spatial capacity, facility capacity, ecological capacity, and social capacity. Next slide. With the next section of the Tahoe East Shore Trail being planned, it will also be of the greatest importance that we have a coordinated strategy for implementing that project with the existing entrance points of Sand Harbor. Other vision plan elements may include a review of the current picnic area and boat ramp, maintenance and office facilities, group use areas, beaches and access, and the Shakespeare stage event area. Once we have conceptual design options, public outreach and input will be critical to the success of the plan. Many of us know what a busy and popular place Sand Harbor is, so it's important for us to gain a better understanding of what's needed there most before we implement any new facilities. And also a quick note for operations at Sand Harbor this year, the park will be open every day at 7 a.m. instead of 8 in order to help ease congestion on Highway 28. Next slide. Here's my contact information if anyone has any questions. I'd like to also mention that the park has been working with multiple partners over the years to implement elements of the SR 28 corridor management plan. Here to discuss this more is Danielle from the Tahoe Transportation District. Thanks.
Oh, Danielle, I think you're muted there.
There we go. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. Good evening. My name is Danielle Hughes, and I'm the Capital Program Manager for the Tahoe Transportation District. And I'm here to share information about the SR 28 Corridor Management Plan and associated project implementation. Next slide. TTD has been working with 12 partner agencies since 2012 to implement the solutions to manage the high demand recreation corridor, working together to implement infrastructure improvements and adaptively manage the corridor through informed decisions and strategies outlined in this plan. Next slide. The SR 28 Corridor Management Plan took a holistic approach to the corridor and with 5 primary goals in mind that address the increasing use through safe multimodal choices, creating a positive user experience while creating sustainable infrastructure and protecting the environment. We looked at a variety of different solutions and to implement those together in a holistic approach. Next slide. Over 2.6 million vehicles access this corridor, with over 1 million people recreating along the shorelines and trails of Lake Tahoe. The demand exceeds the capacity of these areas, and numerous people make dangerous maneuvers and illegal U-turns, searching for parking along the highway shoulders, increasing crash rates, impeding emergency response, creating social trails that cause erosion, impacting habitat and water quality, and increasing tailpipe emissions. Next slide. The corridor approach looks at a balance to the demand through multimodal improvements that include transit, trails, parking management, and wayfinding, eliminating the roadside parking, providing real-time information, and alternative travel options that improve the user experience and public safety. Co-location of power lines and possibly the sewer export lines, reduce wildfire risks, and reduce road closures due to repairs along the highway. Park and ride improvements at each end of the corridor reduce congestion and greenhouse gases. Next slide. The North Demonstration Project was completed in 2019. It includes 3 miles of the Tahoe East Shore Trail and 90 demand-based parking spaces to encourage people to access the corridor at non-peak times or to carpool. Removal of the highway shoulder parking north of Sand Harbor and increasing the fines while improving signage along the highway helps to relocate those people to safe locations to access the corridor. Additionally, there were 6 miles of fiber optic conduit that were put in not only for IT or intelligent transportation systems, but also for access to broadband for the communities of the North Shore. 200,000 users who have accessed the trail, the shoreline, and the businesses from the parking area go to a variety of locations through those parking areas. Many of those people we have found through surveys actually bike or take transit to the trailhead, and we are seeing numerous people carpooling during those peak times. The demand-based system, we're always recommending that people come early and come late. They can pay a lower rate and access the corridor, especially in the evenings. It's much cheaper and even free in the evenings. And those fees actually stay to help operate and maintain the trail and parking. Next slide. The first step in implementation was the East Shore Express Demonstration Project. That began in 2012. Ridership continues to increase with over 40,000 riders in 2019. Unfortunately, due to COVID and driver shortages, we did have to suspend that service the last 2 years. However, we are providing that service starting June 25th, and that will be available daily from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m., going from Incline Village at the old elementary school. And then if that fills, we'll be at the current elementary school spillover parking and to Sand Harbor, as well as along the trail system to access the beach and the trails along there. Next slide. So adaptive management is a key element to the corridor approach that the 13 partner agencies take very seriously. The partners were the first in the state and in the basin to apply what's called thermoplastic paint to create a bus-only lane that further alerts motorists of no parking, no stopping and unloading at Hidden Beach, as this was creating significant congestion and safety issues. We also have, and this also helps to control the visitor capacities of the beach areas and allows us to actually have real data through the trail counters along the trail of how many people are accessing the corridor utilizing the system. NDOT obtained federal variance for this. NDSP took the lead on installation, and the parking program paid for that installation. And so it was a real collaborative effort. The team has worked together to increase restroom and trash maintenance. We've increased signage for litter along the highway, and we have done additional weed abatement along the trail to assure that the environment is protected. The partners will continue to work together to collaboratively address special events along the corridor that happen throughout the Tahoe Basin to make sure that they're properly permitted and that the environment is protected from those uses. Next slide. So here's my contact information, as well as several links to both the SR 28 Corridor Management Plan, information on the East Shore Express, and the Park Tahoe program. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle and Jay. If anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. Anna, you've got a nice compliment in there from Roger. And I'll just give it another 30 seconds. There's obviously a lot going on, and I know so many of us love those, Sand Harbor and the East Shore and Spooner. So it's really great to hear about what's coming down the pipes for those areas. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So again, if anyone has any, feel free to throw them in the Q&A, and Jay and Danielle can get to those with our next speaker. So next slide, Jeff. Thank you. The Watersheds and Water Quality Program area focuses on, unsurprisingly, improving Lake Tahoe's world famous clarity. This includes aquatic invasive species prevention and removal and restoration projects like the one happening at Marlette Creek. So with that, I will hand it to Eamon Curley with the Nevada Tahoe Conservation District, followed by Dennis Zabaglo with TRPA.
Thanks, Victoria. My name is Eamon Curley. I'm a civil engineer with the Nevada Tahoe Conservation District and project manager for the Marlette Creek Restoration and Water Quality Improvement Project. Next slide, please. If you're not familiar with where Marlette Creek is located, it's right next to the Chimney Beach trailhead along SR 28. It crosses SR 28, and just upstream of it, it comes to a fork at the main fork and South Fork. The main project goals that we have for our project are to treat stormwater runoff from SR 28 before it enters the creek, improve fish passage through the culvert and on the South Fork and main fork of the creek, prevent further stream bed erosion through the creek on both the main and South Fork, and stabilize the road embankment along SR 28. Next slide. One of the more interesting to me and challenging parts of this project is the fish passage through Marlette Creek. The Washoe tribe has identified 3 locations in the Tahoe Basin where Lahan cutthroat trout have historically spawned in Lake Tahoe. If you're not familiar with the Lahan cutthroat trout, they're the only native trout species to Lake Tahoe. They're stocked in Tahoe and have been for the I think 2011, but due to inaccessible barriers in some of the drainages, some of these historical spawning locations haven't been accessible to the fish. And some of the goals of our project are to remove these barriers. Next slide. A little bit of background on the watershed. It's a 562 acre watershed. It's been heavily used in the past, mostly in the Comstock logging area. A lot of the original creek alignment has been modified over the years through Forest Service roads to access logging. Multiple dams have been installed and subsequently removed by the Forest Service. There are other projects going on along the Marlette Creek, including improvements to the Marlette Lake. There's going to be dam upgrades planned for 2023, and our project is going to be happening around that same time as well. Next slide, please. Some of the current issues in the creek are bed erosion and disconnection from the floodplain. Like I mentioned earlier, road embankment erosion along SR 28 and the fish passage through the culvert. This is a photo of the waterfall coming out of the culvert. I think you can imagine it's like 3 or 4 feet tall. That fish have a difficult time getting up through and into that culvert to access the waters upstream of the culvert. Next slide, please. Here are a couple of photos of examples of what we plan to do along Marlette Creek. The one on the left is a stream bed. It's to prevent stream bed erosion, just using larger boulders and armoring of the creek. On the right is beaver dam analogs, which have a similar effect, but are a more natural look. And then the one at the bottom is a culvert that has been modified to have a more natural stream bottom, effectively just deepening the water through the culvert to allow for fish to swim upstream. Next slide, please. The schedule for our project is starting off with an NDOT project that's currently going on. If you drive up and down SR 28, I'm sure you've seen or been stopped at the stoplights there. They're doing stormwater improvements that will help with the water quality before it enters the creek. And then next summer is scheduled for the Marlette Dam repairs, and the first phase of our project on the South Fork of Marlette Creek. And then the following summer in 2024, the remaining of the Marlette Creek Restoration Project will be completed, or is planned to be completed. Next slide. Yeah, and I'm Eamon Curley again. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me at the link shown, or go to our website for any additional information on projects we have around the basin.
Thanks, Eamon. Great, and now we'll have Dennis Sabaglo with TRPA.
Great, thank you, Victoria. My name is Dennis Sabaglo. I'm the Aquatic Resources Program Manager for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, overseeing the Lake Tahoe Aquatic Invasive Species Program. As you may know, invasives can have devastating impacts on Tahoe's ecosystem by degrading water quality and outcompeting our important native species. Tonight, I'll be highlighting aspects of not only prevention, but control that are specific to the east shore of Lake Tahoe, permanent boat inspection station near the Spooner Summit, and control work on an invasive clam known as Asian clam at Sand Harbor. Next slide, please. We've been conducting mandatory boat inspections for almost 15 years with really great success. No new invasions since the program started in 2008, preventing species like quagga mussels that are unfortunately found in Lake Mead and other western waters. We demonstrated the value of inspections, so now we're investing in permanent locations rather than having seasonal stations. Permanency provides reliability and better customer service, and also allows us to be more efficient and effective with our resources. The proposed location is just west of where we are now, near the popular sledding area in the winter, sometimes known as Hospital Hill, but right there at the intersection of Nevada Highway 28 and US Highway 50. This project will be is part of the Highway 28 Corridor Management Plan you've heard others speak about. But you can see the map and the diagram on the slide, which would make it part of a multi-use facility with parking and trail access for recreation, in addition to the permanent aquatic invasive species boat inspection station. We currently have funds from the state of Nevada's license plate grant and for developing 100% design plans. What you see here is 30% plans, with additional federal funds likely to support planning and construction in the future. Next slide, please. Shifting to control, we've conducted projects throughout the lake to manage species that established prior to boat inspections, namely for Eurasian water milfoil and invasive plant species and Asian clams. In 2017, TRPA, Nevada Division of State Lands, and Nevada State Parks worked on a control project of Asian clams at Sand Harbor. You can see examples of clams in the lower corners here on this slide. And the center is an aerial view of treatments that were conducted, which uses rubber barriers deployed by divers to starve them of oxygen. The infestation was approximately 25 acres or more in size. And given that size, the objective, unfortunately, was to knock back the population in the most densely populated areas rather than achieve local eradication. Treatments were focused near and around the boat ramp and beaches, relocating a portion of the barriers each year to treat a larger area overall. At the time of this project, our permits only allowed 5 acres of mats to be used at one time. The project lasted just over 3 years, treating over 9 acres. Next slide, please. The barriers were removed in 2020. With post-treatment monitoring conducted to reveal effectiveness of the treatments. This slide represents the overall treated area, as I mentioned, about 9 acres, that's in green, and subsequent monitoring that was done after the barrier removal, with the red line showing the paths divers followed in a systematic pattern, looking for live clams, and the red blobs that you see in the kind of outside and within the treatment area show densities of live clams that remained after treatment. You'll notice some near the ramp, but mainly the live populations were outside the treatment zone. The treatments were extremely effective, with most of the treated area achieving 100% mortality. Next slide, please. In 2021, Nevada Division of State Lands worked with University of California, Davis and Turk, the Tahoe Environmental Research Center, to conduct a follow-up assessment of treatments. This map shows their monitoring results of a wider area around Sand Harbor, but looking at where treatments occurred in the upper portion, the results are encouraging in that their level of mortality is almost the same a year later. The bright blobs again at the top coincide with those densities I showed on the previous map, with most dense being outside of the treatments. This monitoring was also really valuable in helping determine triggers for future rounds of treatments of Asian clams at Sand Harbor. UC Davis suggests that if populations reach 100 individuals per square meter, treatments should be considered for the future. Currently, the highest levels are about 30 individuals per square meter inside the previously treated areas. And compared to the highest populations we have in other areas of the lake near Marlette Bay of around 5,000 to 10,000 individuals per square meter, treating in areas like Sand Harbor that are really important and iconic locations, we're trying to keep those populations at much, much lower levels than they are in other areas of the lake. So we'll be working with our partners to do additional monitoring over time to track the mortality and build a strategy for future treatments in important areas like Sand Harbor. And we'll also be continuing to investigate more efficient treatments that will allow us to feasibly treat larger areas. Next slide. And I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and my contact information is here if you have any questions about these two projects or the Aquatic Invasive Species Program overall. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both for those presentations. And once again, we'll give it another 30 seconds just to see if any questions filter through before we move to our final focus area. All right. Well, not seeing any coming in, but of course, you all have the opportunity to ask any questions that you want in the Q&A down at the bottom of your screen. So next slide, please. Everyone has a role to play in stewarding Lake Tahoe, and science is really leading the way to guide policy decisions. So next up, we have Meredith with Nevada Division of State Lands to talk about how you can help support these EIP projects in your backyard through the Lake Tahoe license plate.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Meredith Goshen with the Nevada Division of State Lands, as Victoria just said, and I'm also with the Nevada Tahoe Resource Team. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of the ways that you can help protect and preserve beautiful Lake Tahoe and also contribute to environmental improvement projects by purchasing a Lake Tahoe license plate. Many of the projects we've been discussing today have been funded by this program. Next slide, please. When you purchase a Nevada Lake Tahoe license plate from the DMV, those proceeds from the sales and renewal fees come back into the Lake Tahoe ecosystem by funding projects that help protect and restore the lake. Anyone can do this if you're a motorist in Nevada. The program itself has generated over $11 million through sales and renewal fees since the first license plates were sold actually in 1998. These proceeds have funded over 175 preservation and restoration projects in the basin. And just a fun fact, the Lake Tahoe license plate is the fourth most popular charitable license plate in the state of Nevada, in Nevada's history, with over 26,000 plates that are on the road today. Nevada Lake Tahoe license plate funds are awarded through an annual competitive grant process facilitated by Nevada Division of State Lands that public agencies and nonprofit organizations can then apply for. We use a wide team of natural resource specialists to identify the greatest environmental needs and challenges facing the basin today or at the time when we're awarding those funds and prioritize the projects that will provide the greatest benefit. Next slide, please. Every year, the Tahoe license plate program generates over $450,000, which go back into the basin to implement vital projects like water quality, stream restoration, state park improvements, climate research, everything from invasive species removal, public education, and more. And so this slide shows one of the implementation projects that Jay just mentioned at Spooner, and I'm just going to move forward and share a couple of the different types of projects that the program funds. This one in particular, Lake Tahoe license plate, is funding interpretive elements for the new visitor center and amphitheater. Other improvements supported by the program that you could be familiar with include ADA accessible overlooks and access points along beaches at Sand Harbor. Next slide, please. Monitoring projects are also supported by the program. And again, these include aquatic invasive species delineation. So that means figuring out where they're at. And then also removal, such as the Asian clams bottom barrier project at Sand Harbor, which Dennis just talked about. That is one of the projects that we used these funds for. Next slide, please. Research and science projects on issues affecting lake clarity and forest health are also really important to fund with the program. These have included past studies on aspen stands in the basin by scientists at UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, and then also include studies on pollutant levels in the lake by researchers at Desert Research Institute. And that's just to name a few. We've also funded studies on microplastics in the water, and studies on rare plants and terrestrial invasive species as well. It really just spans the gamut of environmental improvement projects that we're able to fund with this program. Next slide. Another type of project that we can fund is education and outreach projects that enhance knowledge and foster environmental stewardship of the community as well as visitors. A couple of examples are displays for kids as well as adults at the UNR Museum of Natural History, and then also signage for the Lake Tahoe Water Trail that promotes safety and shares information about natural resources. Next slide. In 2022, our program is funding 7 environmental projects, including an underwater litter cleanup, which you may have heard of. It's been going on for several years now, and the pilot project actually began with Lake Tahoe license plate program funding 3 years ago. We're also funding a virtual nature trail to Marlette Lake, the tourism stewardship roadmap with TRPA, 2 different projects on lake clarity and how algal blooms may be coming up in the lake nearshore ecosystem. Visitor use monitoring on the Tahoe Rim Trail. And then we're also this year funding research to protect rare and sensitive plant species. Next slide. So by purchasing a Lake Tahoe license plate, you can also be part of the solution to help protect the iconic Lake Tahoe Basin for generations to come. I know that sounds like a big feat, but any Nevadan, again, can do this by purchasing a Lake Tahoe license plate for $61 the first year, with an annual renewal fee of just $30. And the place where you can do this is either at the DMV in Nevada or on the DMV website at dmvnv.com/platescharitable.htm. I also wanted to say that California residents can participate in a similar license plate program through the state of California if you're on that side of the lake, the West Shore. Again, my name is Meredith Goshen, and my contact information can be found on this slide. And on that note, I would be happy to take any questions that you might have, or feel free to contact me personally. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Meredith. We'll see if any other questions come through in the Q&A. And really, this is an opportunity to ask any questions of anything that's come through so far. We are nearing the end of the presentation, so we'll just see if anything comes in. And hopefully, if you take nothing else away from this presentation, you can see how much partnership and collaboration goes into the environmental improvement program. Everyone here works so hard to help protect Lake Tahoe, and we know that we do that in conjunction with all of you who have taken very valuable time out of your day to listen. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, for being part of the environmental improvement program. And if you have any questions, like I said, we will be putting a copy of this recording on the TRPA Vimeo page, and we'll send a link out to that as well as the slides. So feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at future EIP webinars. Have a great rest of your evening. Take care.